sovereignty, though. So Elon Musk's accusation about Biden's immigration policy, which is he is accusing Biden of deliberately allowing illegal immigrants into the U.S. to secure a lasting Democratic majority, sparking a broader discussion on immigration strategies. Musk alleges Biden's border approach aims to admit as many illegal immigrants as possible and then subsequently giving them voting rights for a perceived one-party state. The Biden administration faces Republican opposition to legislative efforts for citizenship as illegal border crossings reach record levels. Critics claim lack security for political gain, while Biden denies these allegations, accusing Republicans of politicizing the border crisis. So is Musk right with his characterization of the border crisis?
Interesting. So I think it's pretty clear that the Western liberal strategy is open borders. Just look anywhere you want in the West. It's exactly what's happening. Now, I did a little bit of research on this, and there's a study done from 1980 to 2012. And that study done basically said, I don't want to skew this, but the idea was for every percentage increase in immigration, you have a decrease of 0.42% in Republican votes. I know this is US, but this was done over 42 years. This was 6 election cycles, I think it said. So, when you look at that, you kind of go, huh. So it's just a numbers game. That's really what it is. If you just look at the data, if you look at the facts. So I think the big thing is, how would something like this apply to Canada, right? So when you look at it here, I mean, it's not so different, right? The Liberal government won, the last 2 elections in a minority, but did not have the majority of votes, which means I think it was 5.7 million to about 5.5 million votes in favor of the Conservatives. So you already know the Liberals are like, okay, uphill battle. And we've seen the Liberals decline in support substantially since 2021. In every poll, Trudeau's losing. He's almost close to the NDP in some polls, which is pretty wild, right? So you go, okay, they're already fighting an uphill battle because they weren't winning enough votes. Now they're way lower. Now this is how are they going to fight through this? So then you go, okay, well, look at immigration. Well, last year we set a record by letting almost 1.4 million immigrants into the country. So when you look at that, you kind of go, huh, Western liberal playbook, jack up immigration, use them for votes. Now, there's a couple caveats I'll say. For starters, you don't get to just come to Canada and vote. You have to be here for 3 of 5 years. You have to pass some tests and you have to file some taxes. That's how you become a Canadian citizen. That being said, what are Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh doing in the background right now? Electoral reform. So there is a chance. Now, I'm out on a limb here, so I want people to know that this is purely speculative. I'm just guessing. But there is a chance if Biden is implementing legislation that will allow new immigrants to vote, it's not so far-fetched to believe that Trudeau and Singh, who have a coalition, who have a majority between the two of them, would implement similar policy. And the reason I say that is because we know, based on statistics, these votes will only help the Liberals or the NDP, primarily because they're the ones bringing people into this country. So what does this look like? Well, Trudeau's got another year and a half of bringing more immigrants in, and 2024 is supposed to be another record year. So if you look at his run, how many people he's going to have let in the country since 2021, I mean, if he runs his full 4 years, it could easily be like 4-5 million people, which is fucking wild. Now, if even half of those people have the opportunity to vote, depending how they shake out the legislation, and we know that the Liberals only they lost by 200,000 votes, right, last time. Now, argument's sake, you could say, well, they'll lose by 1 million, maybe 2. But now you add all these you add the immigrants in, and then you go, wait a minute, now this is a very, very close race. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I know this is a guess. I don't know, but this could shake out pretty dark for Canada. And this could be the strategy that a lot of these Western governments use to sort of maintain this one-party democratic rule.
Well, and nothing says democracy like one party, right? But just to put into perspective the insanity of these numbers, so these numbers are coming from the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, is that before 2020, there was less than 500,000 illegal encounters annually. In 2021, that number rose to 1.7, so a 300% increase, over a 300% increase. In 2022, it became 2.3 million, and then in 2023, 2.4 million. So you look at that and you go, there's zero chance that things scale up at that level that quickly without there being some sort of incentive in place for people. Like, and it's crazy that even Biden recently blamed Donald Trump for the border crisis, and you're like, what the hell? Like, the encounters at the border were going down throughout his presidency, and I think up until 2019 they rose again. But then, yeah, like to do absolutely nothing, to get in the way of Texas putting anything in place at their border, and then to blame it on your political opposition is just absolute madness.
Well, it's gaslighting, right?
Yeah.
And what's interesting is the piece of legislation that they were putting through, and I don't know where they landed, so it just got voted down in the Senate. It didn't pass. But what they were floating was, hey, we'll cap it at 5,000 people a day. So you're telling me 1.8 million approximately?
Yeah.
That's your number? Come on, guys. Like, you obviously know that if you don't have the infrastructure to manage these people, and it is hurting your economy, and it is affecting the other people at home, and it's not doing anybody any favors, why are we doing this? The only thing that makes sense is these guys are dragging in the polls, and this is their opportunity to try to bolster it. And when you actually look at Canada versus the US, Canada brought in 1.4 million. That's such a substantial difference, because do you know how many people vote for the president? Do you actually know the number? Like, it's got to be probably, what is it, like
mid 100 million?
Sure, so called one even if just ballpark it and say 150, right? But so whoever wins is getting like 73 to 75 million votes, right? So you let in a couple million people a year, and you use that in comparison to the change in votes. And you go, okay, well, the existing base is still more important, right? But when you look at that number in Canada, well, if the winner's only getting 5.5 to 6 million votes, those 1 to 2 million people, that is incredibly significant. So I actually see this being a much heavier, this carries a lot more weight in Canada if this is the strategy that they're implementing. Now, again, I don't know that they'll be able to pass something like that, because they do have to work through the House, which it'll sweep through, but they also have to work through the Senate. And I hope some of those people have their head on straight and go, no, like, why would we be doing this? There's only one reason that you would be doing this, and this doesn't make any sense for Canada. Hopefully they roadblock it, but I could totally see it happening.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, there's even some darker predictions out there with what all of the illegal immigration facilitation is about as well. Brett Weinstein was recently on Tucker Carlson's show, and I think it's important to note, because it's very easy to get called, a right-wing person or whatever when talking about these kind of things. But Brett Weinstein worked at Evergreen. He was a professor at Evergreen, which is one of the most progressive colleges in America, and he self-identifies himself as a progressive. But he went down to South America and tried to view the Darien Gap himself, which is where it's kind of this corridor in South America where all of these illegal immigrants kind of mosey on through.
Right.
And how he was also saying a lot of these South American countries turn a blind eye to this kind of muling process, essentially, through their countries, as long as they keep moving. Just don't stop here, and we're cool with it. But he was saying too, he was bringing up a much darker aspect that maybe this is one of those things where you grant people citizenship, and it's not just a aspect of being able to drive up votes, but you can also get them into positions that would be necessary to enact, say, certain tyrannical policies, like in police forces or in armies or this kind of stuff. And he was he was making it very clear that this is just kind of a speculation of his, but it is one of those things too where that is on the table potentially. And you say that kind of stuff and people will say that you're crazy, but then you can even go and look back in history, and these things have been implemented before. So like the Roman legions back in the day, they brought in Germanic people, like from the Germanic tribes, to then be able to go and weaponize against the Roman people, because these people had no allegiances to the Roman people. That otherwise they would feel like these armies would be being weaponized against their own family and friends. And well, I have some patriotism towards my country or whatever, I can't do that. Whereas, if you created that army, who knows? And they even just set a precedent in New York, didn't they, where it was the first non-citizen police officer was taken into the force.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so it's like that's already kind of there. It's on the table. And yeah, and you just see what's being done at a certain level. There was just a Democratic senator actually just today that I was watching, and he was I'll pull up this clip right now and show it to you.
The negotiation didn't have a path to citizenship. It was entirely on their terms in order to get Ukraine funding, right?
Well, I mean, Chris, that's been a failed play for 20 years. So You are right that has been the Democratic strategy for 30 years, maybe. And it has failed to deliver for the people we care about most, the undocumented Americans that are in this country.
So you've got a Democrat senator now saying the people we care about most are the undocumented in this country.